Hello there, world history students. This is Mr. Everton, and this is a video in a new unit, Unit 6, which is about 19th century Europe. And I just want to start off by telling you, in case you didn't get this, and if you didn't, it's totally normal not to realize this. 19th century means 1800s. When we say 20th century, we're talking about the 1900s. Currently, we live in the 21st century, which is the 2000s. So whenever you say something century, you got to subtract one, and then that gives you the hundreds that it is. 19th century is 1800s. Okay. So today's video is all about restoring order after the French Revolution. The French Revolution happened. It was this big disruptive thing in European life. It led to a lot of wars being fought between France and everyone else. And when it ended, there was a period where rulers of European countries came together and created order again. So we're going to talk about how that happened. So Napoleon was defeated by Russia. He had experienced a lot of military success. Remember Napoleon? You remember Napoleon, right? Napoleon became the Emperor of France at the end of the French Revolution. And he became very popular because he was so good at, he was such a good general. He was a brilliant general who won lots and lots of battles against other armies throughout Europe, the Austrians, the Prussians, the English. He was able to beat all of these other people. He eventually was defeated because he invaded Russia during the winter. His army got stuck in the mud and the cold, and he lost that army, and that was the beginning of the end for him. This was when he lost. This was the failure of this incredible project that he'd been working on. He was trying to unify all of Europe as a French empire. And this is a map showing you the version of Europe that Napoleon had created by 1812. You can see the Empire of France, and then you can see the other countries that are not officially part of the French Empire, but that are under French control, and they're in green. And then you can see countries that he had defeated and brought into alliance with him, and those are purple. And so by the time he was defeated by the Russians, he was really only left, his only real enemies left were Russia and Great Britain. But he did go down to defeat, and some things that did stay around after him were this law code called the Napoleonic Code that he wrote. This is a hilarious image of God bestowing the law code on Napoleon, and he's writing it down. It cracks me up. Also, you can see in this image the French flag on the far left, sort of crumpled, but there. And that is a sign of the rise of nationalism, which means people who are living in France feeling proud of being French, people in Great Britain being proud of being British, people from Russia being proud of being Russian. So that is another important part of 19th century Europe. So Napoleon's defeated, but his law code, the Napoleonic Code, sticks around and becomes the basis for French laws. And also now, lots of countries throughout Europe are starting to feel more proud of their own countries, because when you fight somebody else in a war and you win, it makes you proud that you won. Or if you're fighting against somebody, even though France lost, the fact that they're fighting against these other countries makes them come together as French people and feel unified. So that's going to help create nationalism. Napoleon's defeated. He gets sent to go live the rest of his life on an island. Okay, what happens next is that the great powers come together and have a big meeting that they call the Congress of Vienna. Now, basically, everybody else in Europe was unified against Napoleon, right? Everybody else was we have to, this guy, France is too powerful. All the other powerful countries of Europe teamed up to eventually defeat Napoleon. And those great powers, the most important countries in Europe, are listed here. Great Britain, France, which just got defeated, Austria, which is the Austro-Hungarian Empire eventually. We'll talk about that later. Prussia, which is the early version of Germany. It's not Germany, but it's like a piece of what would become Germany. And then Russia, which includes part of Poland. So the four of those countries that won come together and have this meeting. And then France ends up getting invited too. And the whole point of the Congress of Vienna, the whole point of their meeting is that they want to make what they called a balance of power. They wanted to make sure that the great powers of Europe were all basically equal in the amount of power that they had. That maybe for a little while one might have a little bit more than another, but that on the whole, they'll all be roughly equivalent, and you won't have any single country that is so powerful that it's a threat to anybody else. Which is what happened with France, right? Like France had become so powerful that it was threatening to take over all of Europe. And they're like, okay, we're never going to let that happen again. We're going to set up a system so that Great Britain, France, Austria, Prussia, and Russia are all equally powerful. And we're going to like eliminate war. We're going to make peace by establishing a balance of power. This is a very small c conservative thing to do. Okay, when I say conservative versus liberal here, I don't want you to think about American politics, because conservative and liberal mean something very different in American politics. In this context, what we're talking about is a conservative person wants to keep things the way they are. Another way for saying that is status quo. They want to keep things as they are. They value traditions and they value stability and they value keeping things as they are. Somebody who is liberal sees problems and wants to reform and change and like solve the problems. Or they see that people want things and they want to give them those things that they want, and that involves change. So the Congress of Vienna is very conservative because what it's trying to do is go back to the way things had been before Napoleon. They're like, okay, do-over time. Napoleon upset the balance. Napoleon created all of this like chaos, and now we are going to redraw the map of Europe and make everything the way that it used to be. And this is what they did to the map of Europe. I know it's a little bit small, but you can look at it and see that they brought back the way things used to be. Like the Netherlands as a country had stopped existing. They brought that back. Poland as a country had stopped existing. They brought that back. France lost a lot of the territory that it had conquered. But at the same time, they weren't like super mean to France. Like they let France have its like constitution that it had created as part of the very complicated series of events that was the French Revolution. So like France came away from this not like being angry. France was like, all right, well, we lost, but like, you know, it's not that bad. Another way that the Congress of Vienna was conservative was that they restored monarchies, which means they brought kings back in places where the king had been deposed, where the king had been removed from power. They brought the monarchs back. And the most important and famous example of this is that they brought back the King of France. Not only did they bring back a king of France, they literally brought back the King of France's brother, Louis the 18th. Like Louis the 18th becomes the new king of France. And here he is looking very much like a king of France. So that's a very conservative thing to do. The French Revolution had happened to try to create a democracy in France. And now the Congress of Vienna is like, well, we're not going to have, I mean, what they had was a limited democracy where there were people who were able to vote for things, but there was also a king. Okay. That meant, because it was so conservative, the Congress of Vienna did create discontent or unhappiness among liberal people. People who wanted change, people who like wanted a more democratic Europe were unhappy that they brought back monarchies. And people who lived in Germany and Italy who were starting to have nationalist feelings of their own, who wanted to have their own country for Germany or their own country of Italy, those people were discontent as well. And that would lead to less stability later in the 19th century, which, as we said earlier, means 1800s. Okay, so what happened to Europe after the French Revolution? I think you've got enough to write 3 or 4 complete sentences. Please make sure that those sentences are detailed and specific. And yeah, thanks for watching. And I will talk to you again soon.